What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And I am back with yet another album review for you guys, and shock of shocks, never heard of this band until doing this review. I am talking about the latest offering from Deathraiser, Forged in Hatred. This also came out on January 23rd, this time on Extreme Music. This is the band's second studio full-length overall, and their first one in a long time. And, well, for those who don't know, including me until now, this is a Brazilian thrash metal band. And of course, you know me and how much I do enjoy thrash. I'm always on the lookout to try and find some really cool thrash metal bands that I never checked out before. And, well, here I am talking about Deathraiser. So, when I was looking at the archives to figure out, like, what bands they were getting compared to kind of get the idea of what this might sound like or remind me of, I got a lot of hints of a lot of old school bands. Kicking things off with Severe Atrocity, after like an ambient intro, goes right into just pummeling thrash with like a guitar tone that's kind of similar to Slayer, even though Slayer riffs can be pockmarked all over the album. I'd say there's more riffing in common with bands like Sepultura and even Creator, like in the 80s. Like 80s Creator with like late 80s, early 90s Sepultura, but with the tones of Slayer kind of combined. That's kind of what I got as far as like a lot of the musical ideas on this album. Like pretty much every single song is a thrashy ripper that just foot on the gas with some breaks here in between, whether it be adding like a more mid-tempo section or getting into a little bit more groove or adding in like even faster sections. But with this opening track, it definitely gave me a sense of what this album's going to be about. And even in the vocals, raspy delivery that kind of reminds me a little bit of, I forget the name of the frontman, but from Morbid Saints, like it kind of has that vibe. Even a little bit of Mila Petroza in the vocals too, because of just how raspy and snarly it gets at times. But also with this track, like you get like a cool like mid-tempo chug. There's even a little atonal melody. But what I will say is, pretty much across the board on this album, you're going to get lots of like sinister harmonies and melodies all throughout to just kind of add more dynamic to this album. Even occasionally some like really nasty tremolos that almost feel like death metal at times, which almost gives this album an almost death thrash feel. Again, that kind of is added with that like old Sepultura, old Creator vibe all throughout. But then we go into Primitive Medicine, where you get this like pulse pounding bass, and bass lines are pretty much all over the place on this album, which leads me to go ahead and talk about the production. Production wise, it's raw and gritty in terms of the recording quality, but the mix is awesome. Like everything's perfectly balanced. You can hear the bass and everything, nothing's weighing in on top of the other. But back to the track Primitive Medicine, like, yeah, you get some, like, Creator riffs coming in here, chaotic leads, which I'll go ahead and talk about the leads. You occasionally get your big Slayer squealy dive bombs, but you also get some, like, really cool shred and some, like, harmonized leads to just kinda, again, add more dynamic. But also on this track, you even get some, like, Exodus moments. Like, there's a slightly punkier style thrash riff that definitely feels like old Exodus. Now, the track Everything Dies, which, no, it is not a Typo Negative cover. The opening riff on this one and the grooves that follow kind of remind me of bands like Enforced and High Command, like the more modern thrash sound. It kind of reminds me of those two bands. And it pretty much stays mid-tempo throughout most of the song. It does get into some like dark melodic progressions before at the end does turn furious and thrashy, and then at the very end return back to that groove. Corporation Parasite, like the opening riff here, kind of gave me a little bit more of a technical vibe, like Testament a little bit. It has a Testament vibe, but then it just goes right back into thrash, back into gallops. Now, the opening riff of Empire of Ignorance, I got reminded a lot of Spirit in Black by Slayer. It's like that riff, but played faster. somehow, and then it suddenly changes into feeling like Creator, and then you get triplet chugs galore towards the end of this track. Symphony of Violence, which is an instrumental track, and it's a damn good instrumental, like harmonies, triplet chugs that almost feel like old school Sepultura, but it also gets very ferocious in the thrash delivery. And then like Toxic Legacy, One Step to the Grave, both just killer thrashy tunes. So One Step to the Grave actually has a really cool build with the harmonies and the dark progressions on top. More triplet chugs show up. And then the closer, Dead Generation, right out of the gate, a breakdown that feels very reminiscent of Slayer. And then it goes back and forth between like chuggy grooves and thrashy fury, and it's all over the place. And in fact, I forgot to mention too, with One Step to the Grave, that track is the fastest track on the album in terms of the speed, like tremolos and even blast beats that almost feel like they'd fit in an old, like on Morbid Visions by Sepultura or even Pleasure to Kill by Creator. Like it's faster, it's snarlier, it's just, bleh, totally nasty. So, as far as any negatives go, I will say I did compare this to a lot of bands, and some of these riffs do feel a little derivative. Wow, they do feel a little derivative, and when it's right at the line of trying some of their own or flat out copying another riff, it's like just barely rubbing on that line without crossing it. But it does help me kinda remind me of like, "Oh, yeah, I remember these songs. I remember this kind of riff before," but they do it in their own way that doesn't feel like straight up copy paste. So, overall, I'm gonna give this one a 3.5 out of 5. I thought this was a really damn good album. In fact, this is teetering closer to a 4 than it is to a 3. It's a hard 3.5 that goes close to a 4. This is an awesome album no matter what. I mean, just energetic. It's short, sweet, to the point at only 34 minutes and some change. But I would say if you are a fan of Sepultura, Creator, Slayer, Morbid Saint, Exodus, I'd say give this a listen. This is some pretty fun thrash. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching, keep your horns high, and your dreams wet.